I don't know what's going on with my hair, but let's just enjoy it. Hello, boys and girls. This is your old friend RJ City, and this is the Hollywood Squared Circle, where we talk about wrestling episodes of non-wrestling shows. And today, we should probably be calling it the Broadway Squared Circle, because we're talking about a play that had a disastrous Broadway run entitled TEANECK TANZI, The Venus Flytrap. For those of you who don't know, the play was written by Claire Luckham and originally titled To Brooke Tansey and performed in Liverpool, England in 1978. So they would do this thing where they would change the first word from Tobruk to whatever local area that started with a T that the play happened to be playing in, I guess to make the main character more relatable. Sure. It's an avant-garde feminist play about a gal named Tansy who, in defiance of her parents, marries a pro wrestler named Dean Rebel. Subtle. And then eventually becomes a pro wrestler herself. But here's the thing, the entire play takes place inside a wrestling ring, and the play is divided up into 10 rounds signified by a bell, which is kind of annoying since it's a little more like boxing. And the characters will wrestle to settle their arguments, like when Dean and Tansy start fighting over who should be doing the housework. And the audience is encouraged to boo or cheer like, you know, they're at a wrestling show. It's part comedy, it's part musical, and really, so is wrestling. So quite frankly, this whole thing sounds like a lot of fun. And it must have been because when it debuted in London, it was a big hit. And like with all big hits, they said, hey, let's move this to New York, which is where it was renamed TEANECK TANZI. Since the wrestling required in the show was so physically strenuous, who knew, the title characters were played by alternating actors. The role of Dean was played by Scott Renderer and Thomas G. Waits, who you may remember as Windows from The Thing, and Tansy was played by Caitlin Clark and Deborah Harry. Yeah, Debbie Harry, meaning Blondie. She had acted before this, but her music career was already very much in full swing. She would apparently attend wrestling shows at Madison Square Garden all the time and thought this would be a fun project to do. Oh yeah, and the ref was played by Andy Kaufman, which really does seem like the perfect role for him since this was about a year after his feud with Jerry Lawler. The wrestling choreography was credited to British wrestler Brian Maxine, who often made appearances in the 1970s in World of Sport. From what I could find, the show was first in previews for 3 weeks off-Broadway in a small loft space, and the reception was very great, and the audiences were very loud, so they thought, hey, let's move this to Broadway, which is where everything went wrong. They did it at the Nederlander Theater, which was a bigger, more traditional theater space, so they had to completely convert it to theater in the round surrounding the ring, so already this was an expensive project. And then the play opened on April 20th, 1983, and closed on April 20th, 1983. It's not clear what went wrong, just that nobody seemed to like it. Firstly, Andy Kaufman would disguise himself as an usher and get into fights with people at the theater saying, if you can't find your seat, I'll kick you out. Not really the right mood to set, but that's Andy. And then, according to the reviews, both starring roles were played by each alternate, so maybe they just traded off halfway through? But for the role of Tansy, critics made it abundantly clear that Caitlin Clark was much better at it than Debbie Harry. Kind of a problem when Debbie is really the big name of the whole production. And beyond that, critics just seemed to care for nothing else. They said it lacked charm, it was overly simplified, the moral message wasn't entirely accurate, and above all else, they just found it boring. People found Debbie Harry wrestling while being managed by Andy Kaufman to be boring. So boring, in fact, that their opening night was also their closing one. Debbie would appear in the much more acclaimed movie Videodrome later that same year, but 13 months later, Andy Kaufman would be dead. As for the play itself, it's still performed in smaller productions, some of which you can find footage of online, but as for footage of this production, it's been lost to time. Well, that was the strange tale of TEANECK TANZI. This has been the Hollywood Squared Circle, and I've completely wasted your time.